못 참지.
그 위에까지 소나미 만들어 보세요.
집을 부숴봐봐. 안 와.
이걸 뭐라 그러지? 수렴 판 이런 거 있었잖아.
그니까 막 이 판이 움직이면서
It is no joke having patience.
Get your letters back.
우와. 날라가나?
약간 도시를
어.
같이 쓰나 봐. 낮에는 사람이 쓰고 밤에는 새들이 쓰고. Hi, we are Team Switch. We visit Wellington to learn about the resiliency in terms of environment resilience. So,
The project for the future talent of Seoul's future goal is the University of Seoul and Seoul Metropolitan Government are operating an innovative educational program 도시미인 that provides students with experience and learning opportunities about overseas metropolitan cities by dispatching students to Seoul's friendly cities. Climate crisis. Seoul City has adopted various measures to enhance climate resilience. These efforts are categorized into three adaptation areas. Firstly, in efforts to create a city with safe water circulation.
You're talking one or two streets of, a few hundred meters long. So they're relatively small areas. And what they do is they calculate this index of deprivation, and that goes from a small number, which means a very affluent, wealthy area, to a high number, which means a much less wealthy area. And interestingly, they plot a histogram actually of the index, and it's a skewed distribution as you'd expect. So, there's a relatively small number of areas which are sort of very affluent, but there's quite a wide range of less affluent areas. And then they divide, that makes sense? So for example, the neighborhood that I live in is pretty normal, pretty average. I think it scores a deprivation score of 4 or 5, so pretty average. So in my area, people aren't eligible for this program unless they had a community services card. So essentially we sort of have two ways of targeting. One is to target specific individuals via the community services card, and the other is a broader support which targets what we call neighborhoods or small communities.
Usually the neighborhoods in high deprivation areas are located.
I can send you some links to the calculation. Yeah. It's intended to be used to provide a way for the government to sort of make sure there is appropriate provision of supports, social support resources. So, typically more deprived areas will require more support services. And so that's one of the reasons that this mechanism, this index has been developed. So it wasn't developed specifically for our program. We just use it for our program because it's a good way of very quickly identifying eligibility.
Then you mean that separating institutes calculate the population in high deprivation area, and you guys use the information to support the target.
That's right. Yeah, we sort of use things that have been calculated by others. So essentially it uses data that's been gathered as part of the New Zealand census. Do you know census?
Census, yeah.
And then that census data, which is collected by a government agency, is used by university to calculate this measure.
Nature and ecological, the New Zealand people is much more higher than people themselves.
Yeah, Wellington is an unusual place. And there's also sort of Wellington City and then the wider Wellington region, and those are sort of slightly different as well. But Wellington City is a bit of an unusual place, I think. It tends to be quite a young population in Wellington City, quite highly educated, quite sort of politically and environmentally conscious, I suppose. And obviously we're lucky having green space around. More broadly, I think there's a strong attachment to nature in New Zealand. Sort of relatively low density population compared to some countries. I think for a kind of temperate country, it is kind of relatively low. Quite strong connection, I think, to rural areas for a lot of people. A lot of people grew up in rural areas and moved into cities. And then I think within the last year as well, we had some really bad storms last year, which I think sort of brought climate change into focus for a lot of people, caused a lot of damage. So New Zealand doesn't really get cyclones, tropical cyclones, but we do get ex-tropical cyclones, and ex-tropical cyclones can still have lots of
switching. On the carbon side, there'll be discussions about offsetting. There'll be a module around the regulatory environment, how to actually assess an inventory, a greenhouse gas inventory, actually working out what your emissions profile is. We'll have a module based on how to reduce it. So again, that's about around planning and looking at how you can make improvements. and both of them then come together again at the bottom with a module around planning. So we expect the CPE graduates to do an energy management plan, and the CPC graduates to do a carbon management plan. And that each of the modules has an individual exam related to it, but that final module, that capstone as we call it, will also have the experience assessment. And probably you'd need maybe 12 or 24 months of experience to be able to satisfy that, just having worked in the environment. And we have experienced assessors to be able to do that. Professional level credentials in energy efficiency and carbon management.
Next, running from the brochure of Wellington City Council, we got to know that New Zealand and Wellington are aiming at achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 for the first. Regarding this initiative, how is ECP working and what is your vision?
What we will be contributing to that is developing capability and capacity of people in the industry. So we do training and we do the certifications. So our certifications cover things like carbon auditing, carbon management, energy efficiency in buildings, energy efficiency in industrial processes. So we will take in, we're a professional body in essence, and we accept as members people who are operating in the field and then look to develop their skill sets. So our part in the big jigsaw is all about knowledge, it's all about knowledge sharing, it's all about skills and capabilities to be able to allow organizations and companies to be able to develop carbon reduction plans, to develop energy efficiency plans, and through that move towards those 2050 goals.
Next, we got to know that CP is trying to cultivate experts related to carbon neutrality. Can you explain more about this?
Yeah, we've been working, when we changed our name and our activities in the very end of the last decade, about 2019 or so, we started introducing credentials in carbon management as well as energy efficiency. We've been running credentials in energy efficiency for about 15 years, working very closely with ECA in setting that up and running that hand in hand with them. Many of our members started dealing with carbon management around about 2015, 2016, and our training, we adjusted our training so that carbon became a very specific part of the training setup rather than just an outcome of energy efficiency. So we were addressing carbon management in a much more direct way. Since then we've developed that even further. Say we now have credentials as well. We're actually introducing in the first half of 2024, so by June, a new certification scheme. And we're going to have, following that, certified professionals in energy and certified professionals in carbon. And that will allow young students a career pathway in the industry. At the moment in New Zealand, and I suspect in very, very many countries, even developed countries, there isn't a dedicated career pathway for people who want to work in carbon management and energy efficiency. A lot of countries will have offshoots from engineering activities, but there isn't actually a dedicated route for people with wanting careers in that area, in the way that accountants have a very obvious professional body and career pathway. Solicitors or lawyers will have a very obvious pathway. We're introducing that for energy professionals and carbon professionals as well, which we like to think is world leading, because I'm not aware of anybody doing that specifically anywhere else.